The history of the lost tribe of the Sith is particular. Yaru Korsin was a human male captain of the Sith dreadnought Omen, who was involved more than 1,000 years ago in the conflict known as the Great Hyperspace War in the year 5000 before Battle of Yavin, an event galactic history where the Sith, led by Nagasa Tau, attacked the Republic. After some unfortunate events, Korsin and the crew of the Omen crashed on a totally marginalized planet located in the wild space region, Kesh. The recognition of the new unknown place by the entire Sith unit was immediate, discovering that they were not alone on the planet. Kesh was the homeworld of the Keshiri, a purple-skinned species, which in addition to this particular characteristic, are part of the Keshiri road-winged creatures, the Uvaks. After being mistaken for the gods that the Keshiri worshipped, the so-called Skyborn, and also, thanks to their powers with the Force and their technology, something unattainable for the Keshiri society, Yaru Korsin and the Sith began to play their new roles at the top of the Keshiri social pyramid. However, the nature of the Sith wouldn't take long to come. Completely stranded in Kesh, a place that in terms of natural resources and their use was useless, their hope of being rescued or even managing to leave Kesh was no longer real. So betrayals and ambition for power began. As leader, Yaru Korsin had to make hard and questionable decisions, even against his own family, to maintain control and power in his new home. After Yaru's reign, Nida Korsin, his daughter, took place as Grand Lord, beginning one of the best times in Kesh. Years later, she would have her heir, Donalan. However, Nida's abdication of the throne of Kesh would take a long time to come, with the death of her son occurring first. Without an heir, Nida would make the decision to change the dynastic succession system to one of merit. Now, with this reform, the Circle of Lords, the name by which the government of Kesh is known, would be led by a single Grand Lord outside the Korsin dynasty, who would be chosen by the second most powerful people in Kesh, the 7 High Lords, and below these two, there were the third in command, the Lords, 13 of them. After more than 1,000 years after the events of Yaru Korsin and his crew, Keshiri society was still governed by the legacy of Yaru and Nida. At the elite of society were all those Force-sensitive Sith humans who enjoyed wealth and privileges, and at the base of the pyramid, the Keshiri and the slaves. One of the lucky descendants of the Sith to enjoy these privileges is Orielle Kitai, a member of the Sith Saber, the military and security group of the tribe, daughter of Chandra Kitai, one of the 13 Lords of Kesh. However, this class division wouldn't be an impediment for her to be able to establish a friendship with a slave marginalized from the society, a blonde-haired man named Jelph of Marisota. Marisota was not his last name. As a slave, Jelph was nicknamed that because of the proximity of his home to the river of the same name. Despite the luxuries and excellent quality of life that she had, Ori enjoyed Jelph's company on his small farm, far from the capital city. Also for her, there was something special about the farmer that Ori liked. How satisfied and happy he was with the little he had, his small hut, and his fertilizer store to provide to the gardeners of the capital city. After having talked many times with her friend, the Sith Saver realized that despite being from Kesh, and like everyone there, having Sith heritage, Jelph knew nothing about their culture or their past, something understandable for his status as a slave. However, Jelph was not ignorant. Ori could confirm on different occasions that he was very intelligent. On the eve of the traditional Keshiri holiday called Donalan's Day, in honor of the son of Nida, the throneless king, Ori required the services of her friend, who grew the best flowers in the place. At that meeting, she took the opportunity to update her friend about everything that had happened in the city, and for his part, Jelph, after directing her to the interior of the farm, took her inside a cabin that smelled horrible. It was a stable full of manure, an immense area. From there, Jelph took out a strange-looking yoke, handmade, a gift for her and her ubak. After their meeting, Ori mounted her creature and, helped by Jelph, loaded all her items and flew away, echoing in her head the good company that the farmer gave her. That man had nothing and feared nothing. At the Donalon's Day celebration, specifically in the Korsinata, a pentagonal stadium, Ori enjoyed the privilege of being in her mother's new luxury compartment, where she could watch the celebration, where only the Grand Lord's balcony was above hers. From her side, Ori looked far away. In the distance was the Omen, the flagship where Yaru Korsin arrived with the Sith. Since the times of Grand Lord Yaru, her people were waiting for the Sith to find them, but no one had come. This worried Ori. If the powerful Sith leader Nagasatao had won the Great Hyperspace War, he would have found them by now. Maybe the Sith and their enemies, the Jedi, had all died. Or maybe the Jedi won, which scared Ori. She only knew about the Jedi from stories, but she hated them. The worst part was that over many years, her ancestors had used up most of the useful things from the ship trying to leave the planet. They still had special crystals for making the lightsabers, but they didn't know how to use the ship anymore. Only a few smart people studied it now, but they couldn't go inside to learn more. In addition to Ori and her mother's place, there were other ones in the Korsinata, occupied by the heads of two powerful political movements, the High Lord Dernes, leader of the Red faction, and High Lord Polyman, leader of the Gold faction. And above all the compartments of the Kesh elite, there was a Grand Lord's compartment, this time occupied by Grand Lord Lilia Ven, a controversial leader since her rise to power from High Lord to Grand Lord was by mere compromise, since the 6 remaining High Lords couldn't agree on choosing the Grand Lord. Everyone was present at the Korsinata Stadium to entertain themselves with a dangerous activity called Rake riding. They rode ubaks that couldn't fly because when the creatures were born, they caught the muscles in their wings. Teams of riders would race each other on these creatures, a rough sport. A while ago, Ori's mother, Kandra, became a very important leader. She replaced Ven as the 7th High Lord and was now the second most powerful person in Kesh. And this was even more important since with the 7 complete High Lords, Kandra turned out to be the one who would break the tie, the person who would have the final say in choosing the successor of the old leader. Kandra was smart. She didn't tell anyone which side she would choose, so Lilia Ven knew Kandra was important now. The tension between the 7 High Lords and even the temporary High Lord was palpable. However, on this day of celebration, they were all friends, supposedly. From the center of the stadium, a sound cut through the tension of the leaders. It was the riders entering the field with their modified ubak ready for their confrontations. Already, at the signal, the field immediately became a cloud of dust and blood. In this activity, there were no strategies or positions. The riders had their lightsabers, but anyone with 2 fingers of forehead worried about the reins and nothing else. As a Sith warrior, Ori enjoyed a good fight, and the duel between the different riders had shades of honor between the leaders. Each warrior was sponsored and supported by a High Lord, with Campion Day being the champion chosen by Ori and her mother. To everyone's surprise, Campion Day's Uvak suddenly jumped, landing where the most powerful people of Kesh were sitting. Ori prepared to fight him with her own lightsaber, but Day flew past her, ascending toward the top leader, Lilia Ven sat. The guards defended their leader and dispatched Day. Terror filled Ori as her warrior attempted to assassinate Grand Lord Lilia, and she knew that the safety of herself and her mother as Campion Day's sponsors was in danger. Kandra told Ori to go back home to prove their innocence. After 2 hours, Ori returned to her family's house. She discovered that the top leader, Lilia, had blamed her family for trying to kill her, further degrading her family's status, where the Kitai family were now deprived of their rights and luxuries. Now, Ori was considered a slave. Feeling scared and alone, Ori rode her ubak to Jelph's. Seeing her arrive, the farmer was shocked to see his friend's face with sadness and anger. Taking her into his home, Orielle tells him what happened about the plot against her family. The Sith's main concern is her mother. She knew she was still alive, but if the Grand Lord had her captured, the question was for how long. The Keshiri law was clear. Slaves couldn't have any uvak in their possessions, so Ori asked Jelph if she could hide her beloved uvak in the stable where he had taken out the yoke a few days ago. To Ori's surprise, Jelph was initially hesitant to agree to such a simple request, but in the end, the farmer gave in. As the days went by, Jelph's great cunning and analysis, something that Ori had already noticed for a simple farmer, helped comfort the Sith. Both exchanged arguments to discover what was really going on. Jelph found the Kitai family situation illogical, since from the little he knew about his own people, according to the meritocracy system, anyone from the tribe could desire someone else's job or position, doing anything to obtain it. Ori was surprised at how ignorant Jelph was about their own traditions and culture. He sounded like he was an outsider. She explained their traditions and how the acquisition of power worked among them. The ambiguity of the laws among the Sith seemed unclear to Jelph, but the farmer understood things well and mentioned to Ori that for him, the entire conspiracy against her mother was orchestrated by Grand Lord Lilia herself, for the simple fact that she would be the one who would break the tie and thus decide with all the backing of the laws the official Grand Lord. Jelph assumed that Lilia had fed her attack to blame Ori and Kandra. Lilia could have saved herself the whole act and killed the Kitai family from the beginning, but she didn't execute that plan. She preferred that the punishment be in a way that everyone in the place could see, using Ori and Kandra as a scapegoat. Ori was stunned. Everything sounded logical to her. In the end, the Sith agreed to stay with Jelph until it was safe, and for the moment, abandoned her plans to recover her family's position. That same night, while Ori slept, Jelph was reflecting on what he had done. He had let the Sith into his life too much, and he knew that was a mistake. Ori's presence put everything in danger in ways she could never imagine, because there was much more at stake than the fortune of a Sith family. For now, Jelph would have to keep a little more distance, and at that very moment he had to leave his place for a very important task, leaving Ori alone. After Jelph left, Ori woke up, and at the moment of leaving the house, she realized that the stable where her ubak was hidden was half open. Seeing this, worry took over the Sith. She went in to check on her ubak, and to her bad luck, the creature was lying lifeless on the ground, with wounds from a lightsaber. Ori grabbed her weapon and began to shout Jelph's name, but the only ones who responded were the Luso brothers, her nemesis in the Saber Corps, who had killed Ori Suvak, claiming that she couldn't have it because she was a slave. Prepared to fight the brothers, they showed her 2 scrolls. Ori could see that they bore her family seal, being a legal document written by her mother. In both scrolls, Kandra confessed to having been part of the plot against Grand Lord Lilia, along with the 2 leaders of both the Red faction and the Gold faction. And in order to spare her life, Ori's mother swore eternal loyalty to Lilia Ven, who would keep her alive, publicly and visibly, as her personal slave. Ori knew that her mother was forced to sign this against her will in exchange for her life, and realized that Ven's plan had worked perfectly. Lilia would now have to appoint her own 3 replacement High Lords, effectively blocking any future where she would lose the place of Grand Lord. The Luso brothers ordered her, for the sake of herself, her mother, and even her friend Jelph, to surrender and hand over her lightsaber With no other choice, Ori gave in. As a sign of humiliation, the Luso threw a shovel at her, symbolizing her new slave status. When they left, Ori's fury came out in the form of violent and destructive blows towards the structures of the Jelph cabin, sheds, and stables. The shovel destroyed everything in its path. The place where her Uvak lay dead was no match for Ori's fury. The next target of Ori's wrath was the pile of manure Jelph kept. But as she hit the mound, something under the surface stopped the tool, and the shovel was released from Ori's hands. She took the shovel and began to dig. Under a tarp, an object of considerable size was hidden. Removing the cover, Ori observed a gray metal knife, painted red and silver, with a strange black bubble sitting atop its rear. Protrusions swept back, wing-like, each tipped with two long spears that reminded her of lightsabers. When she touched it, it was cold and imperfect, with dents and burn marks all along its length. Reaching the rounded section in back, she pressed her face against what seemed like black glass. Inside, tucked into an amazingly small space, she saw a chair. An engraved plate sat just behind the headrest, bearing characters looking similar to the ones she had been taught by her mentors. She read Auric Class Tactical Strike Fighter, Republic Fleet Systems, Model X4A, Production Run 35C. Ori's eyes widened. Orielle had found a hidden spaceship on Jelph's farm. She saw it for what it was, a way back in. The Sith had discovered that Jelph was not a simple farmer, ignorant on their traditions, but with great intellect and analytical ability for a simple slave. Jelph Marion was born in Topperwa, a world completely devastated by the Great Sith War, losing everything. However, his story would have no end. He became a Jedi, where his feeling of antipathy for the Sith, the cause of all his misfortune, grew to the point of wanting to be part of an organization called the Jedi Covenant, a secret sect within the Jedi Order that was dedicated to preventing the return of the Sith. Jelph wouldn't be a simple Jedi. His role would include being a Covenant shadow, a Jedi without identity. Despite having overcome adversity, misfortune would find Jelph again, since in the year 3976 before Battle of Yavin, the Mandalorian Wars would begin. Involving his organization, the Jedi Covenant, where in the last years of the war, this secret sect would be discovered and disintegrated, annihilating almost all the members of the Covenant. After this, Jelph, aboard his Auric-class tactical strike fighter, would take exile to the depths of the galaxy. Fate played a bad joke on Jelph Marion when his ship was swept away by a group of meteorites as it approached the planet Kesh, forcing him to crash land in a remote area of the planet. To his surprise, Jelph discovered that Kesh was no ordinary world. It was under the control of a group of Sith who had been isolated there for millennia without the knowledge of even the Jedi Order. This group was known as the Lost Tribe of the Sith, descendants of Captain Yaru Korsin, faithful servant of Sith leader Naga Sadow. Kesh's society was complex. The Sith ruled, the Kashiri served, and there were also a group of enslaved humans. Trapped without being able to ask for help, Jelph decided that in order to survive he would pose as a slave, working as a gardener producing a special fertilizer. It was at that moment, under his new identity, that his path would cross with Orielle's. Returning from his journey, Jelph found his farm completely destroyed. Panic gripped the Jedi, where with all his might he screamed Ori's name, looking for the Sith. He went to the place where his ship was hidden and found it completely uncovered. Bewildered, Jelph searched everywhere for Ori, only finding her small footprints in the ground in the direction of the main city, Taf. Jelph reached inside his vest for the bundle he always carried on trips. Blue light flashed in his hand. With his lightsaber, Jelph knew that he was a lone Jedi on a planet full of Sith. His existence threatened them, but their existence threatened everything. He had to stop her no matter what. So then, he dashed up the path into the darkness.